Amazon Health AI presents Painful Thoughts.
I can't stop scratching my downtown. Yeah, but I'm not itching to go downtown and tell a receptionist I'm here to talk about my downtown. Some things you'd rather type than say out loud.
There's no question too embarrassing for Amazon Health AI. Chat your symptoms and get virtual care 24/7. Healthcare just got less painful.
Hey, it's Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. Now, I was looking for fun ways to tell you that Mint's offer of unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month is back. So I thought it would be fun if we made $15 bills. But it turns out that's very illegal. So there goes my big idea for the commercial. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3 months, $90 for 6 months, or $180 for 12-month plan required. $15 per month equivalent. Taxes and fees extra. Initial plan term only. Greater than 50 gigabytes may slow when network is busy. See terms.
I mean, one of the things I frequently ask the question is that the technology is ahead of us, or is humanity ahead of us, of technology? That's a really important question, because at the cornerstone of any technology is the human who is, programming it, testing and learning it, building the infrastructure to enable it. It's humans. And so I think that it's really important that we think about how this is evolving, where we feel we really want to lean in and drive productivity and things that will be positive for society. But I think we also have to be very much aware of, let's not Frankenstein this thing into something that we can't control or we don't understand, and we're just going to let it loose anyway and worry about the ramifications of it later. I don't think we can have that kind of a, reckless attitude towards it.
Welcome back to the Ivory Tower Boiler Room. It's Andrew. I am so excited to let you all know that we are now in the top 40 best liberal arts podcasts list that got sent to me, and we're number 3. So thank you all for listening to the podcast. And I just really appreciate that you keep spreading the word. So please make sure you follow us on social media. Instagram is Ivory Tower Boiler Room, TikTok, Dr. Rimby, and please review us on Apple, Spotify. It really, all of it helps. So I hope you just enjoy this episode. And as always, remember, there is an ad-free version on our Patreon. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Ivory Tower Boiler Room. It's Dr. Andrew Rimby with a really exciting guest here. I have D.A. Murray. I'm going to hold up her novel here. So D.A. is a fresh face in the world of dystopian fiction. She's a storyteller in every sense of the word. She's not afraid to push societal boundaries, which we'll get into, or challenge gender norms. I have just loved this, what I'm calling feminist / just really interesting, rich, gendered, post-apocalyptic sci-fi novel that she's created. She's also a tech executive by day, and I want to make clear, all opinions that she expresses do not reflect the industry or the job that she works in, but solely D.A. Murray's opinions and views. So welcome to the show, D.A.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here, Andrew.
Well, I'm so excited to talk about Dominion Ascension, which has just been so fabulous to get through this summer. I think my first question is just, what interested you in this dystopian genre?
Yeah. Well, I've written my entire life. I always enjoyed writing short stories, poetry, etc. And I always knew at some point I was going to write a novel. And, for me, I really wanted to write something that really has a message and really meant something to me in terms of the experiences I've been through as a woman in corporate America. And I wanted to be able to translate some of those experiences and feelings into a story that would not only be entertaining, but also would be, educational in some parts. And then also, I really wanted to be able to lean in on the human relationship aspect. I think oftentimes in dystopian fiction, you can find there's so much emphasis on the world building that the actual characters are almost kind of two-dimensional sometimes, right? Because it's all about this fantastic world and everything that's happening in this fantastic world. Well, I wanted to build a fantastic world, but I also wanted the relationships, the characters to be really rich in terms of just who they are, and then some of the challenges, that they're grappling with. So it was important for the characterizations to be just as rich as the world building for me.
Well, and that's what I've been loving about your novel, is, and there's also an audiobook too, because I know so many now in our day-to-day lives, we're multitasking. So
Well,
I
there's an
know.
ebook. There's an ebook.
Oh, an ebook.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
okay.
There's an ebook. The audiobook that will be coming out with the second novel.
Oh, good. Okay, okay.
Mhm.
So ebook, I mean audiobook coming with your next novel. Um, but can you bring us into this Great War? Because like there's
Mm.
been this catastrophic, apocalyptic event, and then we get thrown into everything, I guess, AD in a way, but post the Great War.
Yeah. So this is a great war that happens and it lasts for about 4 years. And coming out of it, there are some just very devastating consequences because this is a biochemical war for by and large. And I think what was never really anticipated was the full impact or the effects of what could happen. And as a result of this war, men, most men have been rendered infertile and also cognitively impaired. And so it becomes a very critical time in society where women really do rise in government, they rise in terms of power because someone's got to step into this role of completely rebuilding this country. And this is the United States that's being rebuilt, now called Dominion, which is the name of the country. And so, but the concept of this, male infertility, cognitive impairment is something that is a global, has global impact. And so, but I'm just focusing on the story just being kind of in the US now, Dominion, for this time out.
So what I find so fascinating is like I'm a real lover of like Octavia Butler,
Mm.
um,
Mm-hmm.
or of even uh The Testaments, which just
Yeah.
premiered, or Handmaid's Tale right before that with
Yeah.
Margaret Atwood.
Yeah. American Heartland.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. And you mean we have 1984 as a tradition, like there's,
Yes.
but
Yes.
I think this,
Orwell.
yes, I think this matriarchal though approach is so important because like you've kind of talked about, there's so much patriarchal dystopian fiction, or like how the women get blamed. Like I'm thinking The
Mm-hmm.
Handmaid's Tale, it's all on the women
Mm-hmm.
to reproduce, and if they can't reproduce, then they're like thrown into either a servitude role if they're lucky, and if they're not lucky, they go to like the colonies and then have to like
Mm-hmm.
deal with the chemical effects
Mm-hmm.
of the apocalypse, and then basically um won't survive.
Yes. Yes.
So, what was it like, or in your own life, why was it so important to look more into what happens when like the matriarchal power is front and
Yeah.
center?
Well, I think, one of the things, I mean, who hasn't at some point had a conversation about what would this world be like if it was run by women? That's a pretty common conversation, and there's a lot of assumptions and takes on that. But I think fundamentally, we are all human, male or female. We're human, and so what we're really talking about is power. Who
Mm,
has it and who doesn't? And what do the people who have it, what do they do with it? And how do they try to retain it? And the people who don't have the power, how do they try to manage their position in society, whether that's getting it back, getting some portion of it back, whatever the case may be. So I took it from kind of that standpoint. And, one of the things that I think is really interesting, I do hear a lot of people mention, oh, Handmaid's Tale in reverse, that type of thing. But the thing I want to say about that, and I love Handmaid's Tale. I love Margaret Atwood, an amazing, amazing author. No question about it. I see Dominion as a story, not so much about, it's not about flipping the script in terms of now, men are now the ones who, are being subjected to this fertility dilemma, but it's also about the backbone of the society, which is technology. I mean, I think that with Handmaid's Tale, it was very much rooted in religious doctrine, right? And just kind of some of the things that were coming out in terms of how that was being played out in society. I think with Dominion, it's about technology and how technology is really guiding the entire, just evolution of this new society. And I think the fact that it's now women who are in control just happens to be, that just happens to be how it comes about. And I think as to your earlier point about, as a woman in society today, I think that the position of women is accelerating even more now with respect to our ability to be, basically, we are good enough at everything, not just some things, everything. So there's no reason, no reason why women couldn't run, society, the world, if you want to put it that way. And so this just kind of puts that potential prospect in front and says, hey, what if? And now we're just going to take that story further.
Yeah. Well, and I know there's so many discussions about, like your book really opens up, like with Dominion. I was also thinking of in Alien, there's the company, or in the Matrix, right? I mean, a lot of these sci-fi narratives have that like global organization that's controlling, has that tech, it's hands on everyone. And I was kind of thinking about, what do you think of, right? If women were right now running corporations and in the we're the technocrats, right? Like instead of Elon Musk, it was a woman, for example. Would that change the way that the authority is playing out, or would it just replicate the same kind of pattern if we're not really changing the system?
I don't think that is a question that everyone has to answer for themselves. I've been in a number of book club discussions where that exact topic comes up. And I think it's very relevant. It's one of the areas that I really wanted to bring that front and center in terms of an area of exploration. And I mean, let's face it, women are running corporations today, women are in government, like all of these things are happening. But this is about having sovereignty, soul power over everything. And men are subjugated to, you know what I mean? So it's a different level of power play completely. And what if it was like that? And what could that look like? And so that's the big question is I really want the reader to get into thinking about that. And the story itself lends itself to taking the reader through some really, interesting journey and experiencing, what is it like to live in a society where everything that you're exposed to is what the government says you can be exposed to, right? It's all, it's all that everything's being crafted for, for you's audience. And this is what you're supposed to think. This is, the perspective you're supposed to have on a number of different events that are happening. So, and I mean, honestly, you could argue that in many respects, a lot of that is happening on some level even today, right? With the censorship, right, of books, of content, of things that we know history, that we know is definitely at play here. So I just feel like, the book kind of takes some of the things that are potentially issues today and then kind of blows it out a little bit to kind of say, hey, this is where we could be potentially going, and this is what it could look like.
Yeah, well, and I just saw the conversation with JD Vance on The View, and you know, I'll just quickly summarize that Whoopi Goldberg and Sunny Hostin were like questioning him about the very topic you're talking about censorship, specifically about um, Black history being censored in the Smithsonian or in different museums. And like
Mhm.
we know that exhibits have been either edited or like whitewashed in a way to not present the actual legacy of slavery and civil rights and the fight, for freedom and justice. And he literally just says that's not happening, even though we have you know, we have statistics and facts of what's occurring. And it's like, that to me is like we're living in a dystopian type of system right now where we're being told to, not believe what we see with our eyes. I
Mhm.
mean, so unfortunately, it doesn't feel that far removed. But I will say what I really find so interesting is, whether it's the case of The View or the case of, Don Lemon and Joy Reid and
Mhm. Mhm.
Katie Couric. I mean, I could keep going, but
Right, right.
investigative reporters have played such an important role right now in our society to hold justice and the government to power and accountability. And Danny Matthews, your investigative reporter character, I thought was so interesting because reporters do have such a voice
Mhm.
in these, authoritarian types of systems. So, like, where did that inspiration come to make sure that your character had this, like, almost investigative
Absolutely.
voice?
The reason why Danny is an investigative reporter is a couple things. Um, Very early in life, she goes through an experience with her parents, her mother in particular, that forces her to really start asking questions, feeling that something isn't quite right here. I think that the role of the investigative reporter is so critical because they're doing something that oftentimes folks are not always doing, which is they're asking the question. They're not willing to just kind of take information at face value and run with it and say, this is the truth. Um, Danny's entire journey is about seeking the truth. No
Mm.
matter how uncomfortable it is, how painful it may be, she wants the truth. And so I just think that that's such an important component of what it means to really understand power and how you can really start to get a hold of it and manage it. If you don't know the truth, then you're constantly functioning in this whirlwind of information and reality that doesn't exist. You can't resolve anything like that. So I think she had to be an investigative reporter. Just was the thing that made her the most sense. But what I will say also though about her, she's young. She's young. She's still trying to figure out the world. She's grown up in a very confined environment and controlled. And so, in some cases, her perspective can be very innocent, puerile. And so, this is also a journey of her evolution as a young woman coming into herself. And I think that's the other part of it that makes it exciting. It's a society that is evolving, and it's this character that is evolving along with it.
Mm. Well, and who would have thought that we would be living in a society where the phrase alternative facts, popularized by Kellyanne Conway, which
Yeah.
I
Hmm.
am from South Jersey originally, and I don't like to, I'm like, well, she was from South Jersey, but uh, there's this element of living in a post-fact society, like my question is, do do you think that the American people are able to establish what is a truth, and or has like the idea of what the truth is just really shifted depending on confirmation bias, like so many people just wanting their own opinion reflected back at them on social media, for example?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely the whole, perception is reality thing. People believe what they want to believe. It's as simple as that. And I think that, again, I think functioning in that, world of the reality is what I say it is. I think that's a false bubble and it's not sustainable by any means. And so you start to see, this, you know, engineered reality start to just, flutter away, right? It happens over time. And I think it's something that's really interesting too. Um, that reality is something that happens little by little, not just something that all of a sudden it just explodes and everything's done and everybody looks up and, oh, here's the truth. It doesn't have to work like that. Little by little, it starts to come into focus for people. And I think we're seeing that play out in our political environment today. I think we're seeing that play out in terms of, just even women and our role in society, and how, I think about some of the things that have evolved in our society that have really kind of taken us back quite a bit. I think about something like Roe v. Wade,
Yeah.
and how that didn't happen in just one fell swoop. That happened a little bit at a time, just a little bit and a little bit, taking more and more and more until we're at a stage where we are today, right? And so I think that as humans, as Americans, we have to constantly be asking questions and seeking the truth and be willing to accept what it is. Ask about the source. Where did this come from? Is this a biased source? What helps me confirm that this is true versus makes me question the truth? Isn't that what our entire American justice system is about? Getting to the truth. And that's something that I just think at the end of the day, this is really the mantra of what Danny lives by. And it is the mantra of what this entire story of Dominion is built upon.
Mm. Well, and for the viewers or listeners right now, like, what are some things that Danny comes up against that, like, kind of just reflects? Because I know, you've talked about how relevant your narrative is to current contemporary politics or society. Like, what are some forces she comes up against that is similar to things we're seeing right now?
Mhm. I think that I don't want to give away too
Yeah,
much of
yeah.
the storyline, but one of the things that Danny comes up against is the story of how Dominion was established. The chemical warfare and the kind of what the results of that. Danny learns that that's not exactly true.
Mm.
I'll leave it at that. Yeah. So that has been manufactured. And there's an entire system upon which Dominion is built upon. It's called Allegiance, which really is a system that does put men in or young boys at the age of 12, puts them in very specific roles in society. And so there are truths that Danny learns about that system in and of itself that is very troubling. So she's finding out all of these foundational aspects of this Dominion society are false in some way, shape, or form. And so then the big question becomes, what do you do with that kind of information? How do you tackle it? Right? And so that's an interesting aspect of the story too, is how does she take on this information and decide how she's going to manage it? And she does it in conjunction with an old an old friend from childhood who she reconnects with, and she goes on this journey along with him. But their objectives they intersect to some degree, but they are also very different. So I love the journey aspect of this story because it gives you a different perception of this society with every single event happens. I love that part about it. It's fun.
Well, I know you have a lot of thoughts about AI, and I have to bring up, because like when you're talking about like the system Dominion's, running on, and just like how technology is really functioning in your novel. I'm just so curious about what are your thoughts of, like, Danny is a whistleblower, and I feel like there's more and more coming out about AI data centers. I know here in New Jersey, there's a lot of protests happening in towns with data centers, and not really knowing exactly what these data centers' purpose is necessarily. There's conspiracies running out there about, are they going to try to, is it almost going to be like a profit prison type of system, or are people going to be like workers be thrown into the data center? Who's going to run the data centers? What are your thoughts of, like, has the government been transparent right now about what these AI data centers are? And B, do you think we have enough language right now to even understand the use of AI and why it's something that, we should be using in our daily work life and personal life? Why does anything exist? Why is there something rather than nothing? I think that's a question we all, as curious people, have asked ourselves. And let me tell you, Professor Stephen A. Simon's new book is so thought-provoking that I can't wait for you all to pick it up. He provides his experience as a professor of political science and philosophy to explore that question with such a variety of perspectives from science, religion, philosophy, and even mathematics. He helps us understand what could possibly explain the most fundamental fact of all, that anything exists. So you can get this from broadviewpress.com. The floodgates have opened with science fiction as a genre in my life because I owe this to my husband, and I'm going to give him credit. He has really gotten me to think more about sci-fi, film, and literature. I have to say, Minority Report, absolutely amazing. And Alien, I mean, who doesn't love that alien coming out of that human body in the first film? So Professor Jason Haslam's new anthology provides a lot of exploration with all different short fiction, so many sci-fi authors, over 200 years, including sci-fi that explores indigenous futurism, feminist science fiction, Afrofuturism. Again, you can get this on broadviewpress.com. And last but not least, my upcoming episode with Professor Matthew James Vachinsky explores his book, which is Original Inquiry, A Guide to Research for Undergraduates, a great toolkit for all faculty out there who are just trying to find a book that helps their students understand how to collect research sources and then, right, the hardest part, build and organize their essay with all of these sources and to make a cohesive argument. I can't recommend Original Inquiry highly enough. So again, all three books can be found on broadviewpress.com. Use the promo code Ivory Tower for 20% off.
Are you a fan of classic Hollywood movies?
Are you a fan of queer cinema?
Then do we have the podcast for you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Christian Garcia.
And I'm Luke Del Mar.
And we are your hosts of That Old Gay Classic Cinema, where we take a look at some of the greatest films of all time and analyze them through a queer theoretical lens.
Let's be honest. LGBTQIA+ people have been a part of Hollywood since its inception, and this podcast celebrates those artists and entertainers of yesteryear while also taking a closer look at the queer-coded characters and stories in classic Hollywood films long before queer representation entered the mainstream.
So follow us down the road of classic cinema as we give you a guide to some of the films that touched our hearts, brains, and even gave us courage to be ourselves.
You can listen to That Old Gay Classic Cinema wherever you get your podcasts, and be sure to follow us on Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok.
All right, listeners, we're ready for our close-up.
If data management is slowing down your business, you need the Intuit ERP. If one entity is here, and one here, and one here, and one here, you need the Intuit ERP. If scaling your business feels like starting over, you need the Intuit ERP. Intuit Enterprise Suite is the AI-native ERP solution that consolidates, migrates, and automates, all in one place. Learn more at intuit.com/ERP.
Still waiting in line? Again? That's time you'll never get back. Save time and money with Stamps.com. Over 4 million businesses have skipped the line with Stamps.com. Join them to save up to 90% off carrier rates from your computer or phone right now. Print postage for certified mail, registered mail, and packages in seconds. Then schedule a pickup right from your home or office. For a limited time, go to Stamps.com and use code PODCAST for a free welcome gift. Taxes and fees apply.
Yeah, no. The usage of AI is still very nascent. I mean, you still see pockets of where it can be incredibly efficient and productive. And I think that that's great. But I think it's like anything else, there have to be guardrails around what can and cannot be permitted, just for the sake of human evolution and privacy. And, those are the types of things that are really important. And I think that there's acknowledgement of that. But I think as this evolves, I think people are still trying to understand the full scope and depth of how this technology can really impact our lives. I mean, one of the things I frequently ask the question is that the technology is ahead of us, or is humanity ahead of technology? That's a really important question, because at the cornerstone of any technology is the human who is, programming it, testing and learning it, building the infrastructure to enable it. It's humans. And so I think that it's really important that we think about how this is evolving, where we feel we really want to lean in and drive productivity and things that will be positive for society. But I think we also have to be very much aware of, let's not Frankenstein this thing into something that we can't control or we don't understand, and we're just going to let it loose anyway and worry about the ramifications of it later. I don't think we can have that kind of a, reckless attitude towards it.
No, thank you for that. And I mean, do you think that the public, should be worried about, there's a lot of fear of gutting jobs, or just panic around everyday people's job security right now in the wake of AI?
Sure. I mean, I think fear is something I understand the human reaction is to be fearful. But I think that this is an evolution that is here to stay. It's not going anywhere. And I think that in the same way that there are jobs that have been cut and altered and newly created to fit some of the outcomes of this, of technology. And I think it's like anything else, it's going to evolve, and people are going to have to develop other skill sets to be able to work effectively with this, with AI. I mean, that's just the reality of it, right? It's so interesting, you hear a lot of people say, oh my God, with AI, you don't even have to think. You don't have, it's just like you type in a question and here it is. Well, I think it depends on how you use it. I use AI in my job as a tech executive, but trust me, I use AI for the grunt work, aggregating data, or you know what I mean. But what I think about, I spend my time strategically thinking about How does this make sense? How do I want to alter this? What can I pull in? Like, so you spend more time on the more value added information or things, and all of the stuff that's just kind of like, I don't want to spend, 30 minutes pulling data from 4 different sites. And, I don't want to do all that. I want that done immediately for me. And even get a couple of highlights. Okay, I want to see kind of what are you telling me? Okay, now I'm going to dig into that. I'm investigate, make sure you're telling me the truth, because that's the other thing about AI. It's not infallible. How many times have you typed in a question in Chat GBT or something and gotten a response and you're like, no, I know that's not true.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, you have to be discerning about, the information that you get. And so I think that's the muscle that we have to exercise as human beings. Is like, this spoon feeding thing is not going to help us. We have to be willing to get in there and do the work to leverage this amazing, capability, but we got to do the work. We got to pick up the shovel. We got to dig out the dirt, like, we do all that stuff, and just recognize that it's just going to be an easier experience for us because now we have somebody helping us along, have something helping, think of it as a helper. Don't think of it as a complete substitute for thinking.
Yes, yes.
Doing.
And, I had on the podcast the former chief information officer for Lululemon, Julie Averill, and she just came out with this book called Chief Impact Officer, which is like a memoir, but also a business, guide about really what you're saying, DA, which is the human experience needs to be centered in the technology when using AI. Like AI, I think like you're saying, we give a lot of power to it to like solve everything when like at the end of the day the people are the ones reading its responses, analyzing. Is like she says, so many corporations right now are just trying to like use it for efficiency or optimization without really knowing how they're going to implement it in their business practice. It's kind of just like, let's throw everything into it and see what happens.
Yeah. I mean, the one thing you learn or you see, is it's one thing for something to be you're fed the answer. This is what you should do. But what's the hard part is actually making it happen. The cultural bias or the cultural challenges of implementing, executing a plan is that's the really, really heavy lift, because that's where the human factor is most critical. Bringing people along, getting them to buy into your vision, and to your earlier point, there are going to be people who are fearful. There are going to be people who are really energetic and excited about it. And how do you bring all of those people and then everybody in between, bring them along the path? That's the hard part, And so that's why I was saying earlier, the easy stuff is like, yeah, this spits this out. It gives you this information. That's great. But you got to do something with it. And that you got to think about how you do that thing, right? And so that's why the human aspect of AI it's the cornerstone. I mean, even think about it. The folks who do programming and testing and learning and building, there are inherent bias, right, associated with some of the ways that technology could be built out. And so there's guardrails around that. How do you manage bias? How do you know it's bias? How do you plan around that, build around that? So there's all kinds. I think that we understand as humans, we understand that there are pitfalls along the way. I just think we have to be willing to acknowledge when we come across it, and instead of just closing our eyes and saying, oh yeah, well, it's still fine. Can't do that.
Yeah, well, and
So,
I wish I could bring you into like my university conversations, because I don't think this would be something that you would be surprised by, DA, but a lot of English professors right now, the majority are becoming like AI detectives of just,
Yeah.
saying don't use it at all. And, we need to protect and preserve the integrity of the humanities. And I completely understand like where they're coming from in that regard. At the same time, though, I keep saying, well, at the same time, if we're trying to train students to, you know, go out into the workforce and understand the value of the humanities, shouldn't we also see, like, well, what happens if we use AI for technical writing purposes? Because so many jobs now are using AI for technical writing, for emails, for proposals. But then what happens if you try to have AI do creative writing? Why do we not like it? And let's go back to what it looks like to be a creative writer and actually understand that the arts will remain intact because we want, like, your individual voice in Dominion. We want the theater world, the film world. Like you're saying, there should be guardrails. And I always am wondering, well, why aren't we citing when someone's using AI? Like maybe we need to treat it as a source, just like any other kind of source. And I don't think we're yet, though, at that point where um, people are like citing when they use AI. And then I kind of wonder, well, if people start citing AI, is there going to be a backlash and are people going to be judged for using it in certain workspaces? And then what happens, you know, when there's like judgments being made about who's using it and who's not? I'm not sure if you've seen that play out yet.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely, I'm very much aware of the, kind of the argument within, the creative world, right? When it comes to writing in particular. And, I am of the belief that, you know, what I put on paper, that is me, 100%. That is my brain, my thought, etc. Now, I have to do research.
Yeah.
Just like anything else, I have to do research. And I think it's like any other writer. There are going to be things you need to research. And as a matter of fact, in Dominion, there is a scene where Danny and her friend, they have to scale the side of a mountain. I have never scaled a mountain in my life. So I had to do research on things like what kind of equipment do you use? What's the elevation levels? What does, the oxygen intake? Like I'm doing all this research. You need that. But the fundamental idea of how I communicate that experience, that scene to the reader, that's me. 100% me. So I feel like I think AI is an incredible tool. I mean, can you imagine back in the day when people were using like abacus for counting, and now we have, like calculators. Thank God, calculators, right? I mean,
Hmm.
this is idea of here's a tool that makes your job easier or faster. There's nothing wrong with that. But at the central part of where the magic comes from, that's the human. That's why I was saying, is technology ahead of humanity or vice versa? And I feel like that's the thing that we have to continuously, be aware of. And I mean, to your point, I mean, I'll be honestly, like on social media, if I see something and it is an AI generated reel or something, I just pass by it. It looks fake. It's not, like there's nothing authentic. I don't see the person, the human behind that. So those are the kinds of things that, kind of turn me off personally, you know, and because that's the whole point is you want to see authenticity. You want to see humanity at its best, at its worst, and everything in between. And that's something that today technology cannot do.
Well, and I was going to ask you in your novel, how do you like there's preservers of history, um people working in that realm, women working in that realm specifically. Like, how did you think about how you were going to present arts and culture in Dominion, specifically
Yeah.
because of how, tech heavy a society it is? Looking for summer reads, The Gay and Lesbian Review, a bi-monthly magazine that features arts and culture conversations about the LGBT community, has you covered. The July and August issue is all about summer getaways and artists. So, for example, there are articles about David Hockney. There's an article about the sculpture in Central Park that some of you, if you've seen Angels in America, definitely recognize, by Emma Stebbins. So I can't wait for you all to get your hands on this issue. As always, there are TV reviews, film reviews, book reviews, theater reviews. So if you just don't know where to begin with LGBTQ literature, this is a great magazine to inspire you to add more books to your to be read pile. I love the Gay and Lesbian Review, and I'm so happy because I have a promo code for you. Go to glreview.org and get the print subscription or the digital subscription and put in ITBR choice for a free issue of the magazine.
Welcome to Severed, a podcast week dropping new episodes every Monday. Severed True Crime and Severed Paranormal episodes deep dive into murder, mysteries, and the otherworldly in a concise format. A 7-minute story to frame the case with thoughtful analysis and our usual banter.
We sometimes find the lighter side of darker cases. We offer 3 spin-off shows, Severed Strange Stories, Severed Haunted You, and Severed Serial Killers that highlight the unusual to lighthearted topics from the digital dumpsters of true crime, haunted universities, and the minds of madness like Ted Bundy and Jeffrey Dahmer.
We are your co-hosts. I'm Harry Chambers.
And I'm Drew Hudson. Listen on all major podcast platforms, including Rogue Media Network and Radio Garden State. Follow us on Instagram at severed_podcast.
Well, I think that I wanted the tech to definitely be the backbone. I think when it comes to things, to your point, arts and culture, there's like sprinkles of that throughout the story, and more in terms of symbolisms than anything else. And because I think that the idea here is, yeah, this is a new society, but how can you possibly move forward without the impact of the past? I mean, that was really an interesting question. And one of the questions I got was, wow, the names of the character, Danny and Robbie, that's just so basic. Most dystopian novels, it's like, Lauren. Oh, it's really like, their name, or something. And I said, well, there's a reason behind that, because we're talking about past society, something everyone knew and understood, going into something completely different. So I wanted their names to be basic, everyday things that we know. But then here they are trying to live their lives in a very, very different type of awareness and society. So that was the symbolism, but for the names. But yeah, I think art and culture is important because it's a reference point for different characters in the book. They can remember there's a part in the book where Linda, the mother, she talks about what Dominion was like before the Great War and what it's like now. She has that reference point, and that's a really important piece of it. Because oftentimes, I think when it comes to reconstructing anything, there is a desire to want to bring back the past, bring it forward. I want it the way it was before. That's impossible now. You don't have that ability. So what do you start to do? You start to bring back aspects of things that you can force fit into this new society. So that's what the story does, is it brings back little bits and pieces of the past, but in a really, really relevant way.
And I love that this exists, that intergenerational connection, because I think right now I'm just seeing so much nostalgia for the analog era, like so much nostalgia for what was it like before, if you only had a flip phone, right? I remember when you had to text every
Mm-hmm.
like number you had to like use for letters, and like we weren't texting a lot because it just took forever, you know, or social media. Facebook was kind of just like checking in with your friends. It wasn't
Mm-hmm.
about creating a public platform. And at the same time, though, like here in New York City, there's the return to video stores. There's a
Mm-hmm.
return, a huge growth in library use. Like I use the
Yeah.
library for DVDs if I don't want to pay for a streaming service. I mean,
Yeah.
I think at the same time you're right. There's also such a, like, how do you think about the way that we the consumers, we do have a say, and we are like fueling the growth of the bookstores again and third
Yes.
spaces.
Yes. Yes.
So, right, can we live with both, right? Can we have both analog, like third space communities and technology, and maybe just be more mindful of when we're in each space, so to speak?
Absolutely. I mean, I think there's unique aspects to everything. I mean, yeah, I love music. Absolutely do, but nothing compares to the experience of listening to music from a vinyl record.
Mm,
Or honestly, it's a totally different experience. I mean, yeah, I can get my tablet and I can read a book on my tablet, but it is not the same as picking up that physical
no,
book and turning
it's
those
true. It's
pages.
true.
There's just something about the familiarity or the nostalgia of an experience that gave us such joy at some point in our lives. And even if we, kind of tuck it away for some time, when we come back to it, it's just so much joy to that. I mean, it's crazy. It's like, I remember, it was some time ago, I went into the store and it was like one of those novelty stores and they were selling like pop rocks. I was like, pop rocks, see, no, okay, it's like what the heck, and so, but it's the same thing, and like with the bookstores, hands freaking down. That is ultimately, I could get lost in a bookstore. I don't care how many online experiences you create for me where I can go online and make it easy for me to search and find book. That's fine and dandy, but to walk into a bookstore and to just go through those aisles and look at those books and touch the spine of those books and sit somewhere and just cuddle up and read something, or go to the next door Starbucks that's attached to the library in some cases, or
Yeah,
something, some kind of a cafe, and get something to drink and sit back and read. There is nothing like that you're going to get with an online book shopping experience. But you know what? That's okay, because we need both. We need both, right? So I don't want to see, independent bookstores go away because we've got either these mammoth chain bookstores that are eating up everything and driving, the cost of everything to a point where they can't survive, or an online book situation or bookstore where you can just buy it and it's, at your door, within, a day or two. There's also the need to say, there's this experience that I highly value and I want in my life. And that's important too. So yeah, I can coexist.
absolutely. And like I've had the pleasure of over the last few months having been asked to run a classic book club at my library here in Secaucus and outside of Manhattan. And we're about to do Go Tell It on the Mountain by James Baldwin. But
Hmm.
last night I just did a discussion of The Great Gatsby, and we talked a lot about, you know,
Yeah.
the divide in social class, the myth of
Yeah.
the American dream, the white supremacy that is very,
Mhm.
unfortunately has reared its head. I mean,
Mhm.
right, whether that has always existed in America, I mean, I think we could argue it's always been a part of America's
Mhm.
troubled history. But there's something about having those conversations with the community that, yes, right? Online book clubs exist, but I do think there's something to whether it's online or in person, just having a conversation with people that it really, people are recommending different things to read, to watch. It's like what you're saying, DA, about the bookstore. Like, I love when you meet an employee and, even at Barnes and Noble, and like I've had my students do this and ask the Barnes and Noble employee for help with their research. And like, them saying, wait, I can ask an employee to recommend books to me. And I'm like, yes, that's what they're here for. And that's what a reference librarian's job is. And
Mm-hmm.
that they don't have to go on their phone to just try to find um, reference points. And I think there's something to that physical tactile experience of being recommended things. It's why I love video stores too, because the people who work in these places, they know the
Yeah.
catalog
Yeah.
and they can
Absolutely.
connect things for you. It's exciting.
Humans, we crave human interaction.
Yeah.
And the more we try to, kind of subdivide that or supersede it with, these kind of artificial interactions of sorts, I think the more I think our person suffers from that, and I think that it's like anything else, I think, in life. Being human takes practice.
Mm.
Just does. You're not just human just because you're human.
Yeah.
Being human, being a person who is part of the world, experiencing the world, and bringing that experience to other, it requires engagement, right? Right?
Mm.
It requires being present, looking around, seeing what's going on, and recognizing that every single person's perspective is different. And that's the beauty of it all. Not the homogeneity of everybody thinking the same thing at the same time in the same way. What is that about? You know what I mean? So, I mean,
Mm.
that's the beauty, I think, of what we're seeing is how much of what we want to move forward in our society is about being like everything else, and how much is about being different or being unique or being your true authentic self. And yeah, those two are going to consistently clash, but we've got to recognize that there is value in both. It's just a matter of when and how. How do we manage it? That's the piece that's human. I just don't, I think that's so nascent as well, is how do we get our arms around this thing, this eight-headed, hydra, if you will, and start to make sense of it and twist it and mold it and make it something manageable and something that even if we turn our heads for a minute, it doesn't jump out and bite us in the neck, right? Something like that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and when I see studies like in March 2026, The Guardian published this piece, and the heading is Gen Z males twice as likely as baby boomers to believe wives should obey husbands, which, you would think, wait, I thought every generation is progressing in views. There
Yeah.
does, right? We have the phenomenon of the trad wife, that happened in
Mm-hmm.
Euphoria recently in their storyline. I mean, your book is so timely because like there is almost this um men seeing younger men seeing themselves as not having as many rights, whatever they define that as like older men in the past. But why do you think there is this return to wanting like a traditional gender relationship between, straight men and straight women?
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's like everything is 360, right? I mean, you just kind of see things come back around. But I think more importantly, I think too, we talked a little bit earlier about fear
Hmm.
and how fear can truly completely augment the reality that we see in front of us, right? And so, when you talk about the traditionalists, if you will, going back to this traditionalist view, I mean, a lot of that is bred, fear of, how women have progressed in society. The fact that, a woman can have, this job making more money than a man, possibly taking a job that, a man may have felt should have been for him. Women are, the breadwinners in many, many families today, and making decisions that they probably weren't really able to make 30, 40 years ago. And so I think that, we also have to look at what are the things that are causing fear. And then I think the other thing you have to look at is our youth. I mean, when you think about, kids and, just the fact that the numbers in terms of kids who are graduating from something like high school is not particularly favorable anymore. I think you see the number of kids that are, going to jail, fraught with drugs, having violence in schools. You see all of these things happening. And I think it's very easy to kind of say, hey, one of the reasons this is happening is because the mother is not in the household. She should be there. She should be with her child and educating and being right alongside the school system, trying to bring this, this youth into a mature way of living and being a contribution to society. And the reality is that perception is not something that should be sitting squarely on the shoulders of women. Yeah. It takes two. They're parents, right? Now, we don't all have the experience of having two parents in the household, but I think the question of what does that patriarchal system look like? Who is the mother? Who is the father figure? Who is the father? Who is the mother figure? Like, those are the kinds of things that come into question. But front and center, I think that a lot of the kind of backtracking into, Gen Z kind of being more traditional, a lot of that is fear. And I think it's also inbred ideologies from certain, political organizations that are really, dialing that in. And hoping to impact that way of thinking. So there's a lot of dynamics to it, but I think at the end of the day, that's why I continue to say how critical it is to ask questions and don't take things at face value and think for yourself. Don't let a political organization think for you. Don't let, think for yourself. Question everything, because if you don't, you will end up in a situation where others will do it for you.
Oh, yeah. And a lot want to do it for you. I mean, well, that's the way that these systems, especially...
Yes, it is for it to your benefit as well,
yes,
right?
Yes. Yeah. What do they say? Don't give in, don't give away your power, and acquiesce in advance, especially when you're on the precipice of authoritarianism. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's how authoritarianism regimes get a hold, is the people usually are so fearful that they just are like, well, my voice doesn't matter anymore.
And you make them ignorant. You make them ignorant. You take away the thing. Taking away knowledge is one of the primary ways that you can dominate people. Make them ignorant, make them dependent, and then, there you got your pile of clay to mold as you will.
Yeah, it is true. Knowledge is power, as the New York Public Library and so many have as a motto. Well, DA, I loved this conversation. I mean, I know, please tell everyone, I know your second book has a really exciting title that, kind of it shows us where we're heading in the Dominion world.
Yeah, the second book is Dominion Anarchy. So let that title, let your mind run away with that one. But yeah, you can learn more about Dominion at damurrayofficial.com. That's my author site, and that's also where you can find many of the interviews, like this amazing one that'll be on my site, along with where you can buy the book. So that's always great. And there's also a really fun book club kit that you can download. And in addition to obviously having things like discussion questions, there's a glossary, because that's one thing about Dominion Ascension, because a lot of the books are a lot of the words or things I kind of made up to give some credence to some of the futuristic things that are happening in the book. There's a glossary, but there's also there's games in there, as well as a really cool cocktail and culinary recipe section to it as well,
fun.
because there's different things that are in the book, that are referenced, that I thought it would be fun to have something like that. So if you really want to create it like a Dominion experience, you can kind of use some of the tools in the book club kit. And then also my social sites, DA Murray Official on TikTok or Instagram, Facebook, etc. So a lot of the content from the book, as well as I talk to a lot of folks about just understanding what their favorite book is, and having people really, dial up why they're reading a certain book, the kind of experience they're getting in it, and what they would recommend to people. So that's also a great way to just really indulge your book loving fantasies.
Yeah, well, I'm going to try to have my podcast book club, because I have two, that meets virtually. We haven't really done sci-fi or dystopian, and I really want them to read Dominion Ascension.
Oh, that would be fantastic. No, I really appreciate it.
I'm gonna really, advocate. But DA Murray, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much, and
Thank you.
I really appreciated this conversation.
Awesome, Andrew. No, thank you. I appreciate it as well. You have an amazing day.
Thank you. You too.